The void of the Null realm trembled, not from fear, but from the sheer weight of a power that should not have existed within a mortal frame. Son Goku moved faster than the eye of a god could track, a streak of blinding brilliance tearing through the infinite white. He was not an ultra instinct, he had ascended beyond it, wrapped in a cascading aura of golden angel power. A forbidden synthesis of Saiyan volatility and angelic precision, Goku clashed against the twin guards of Zeno. The impact was mesmerizing. The guards, typically stoic and immovable, were being forced back. Goku's fists, wreathed in halos of golden light, deflected their staves with a rhythmic ringing chime that sounded like bells of war. He spun, delivering a kick that warped the space-time of the Null realm, forcing the guards to cross their arms in defense. He was smiling. He was enjoying the evolution. He was becoming something that blurred the line between worshipper and worshipped. High above, the Grand Priest watched, his violet eyes narrowed by a fraction of a millimeter. He did not see a warrior overcoming limits. He saw a cancer metastasizing in the body of the cosmos. The mortal had touched the golden light. He had mimicked the divine frequency too perfectly. "Enough," the Grand Priest murmured. The word was not shouted, but it froze the air. The Zeno guards instantly vanished, retreating to the Grand Priest's side. Goku skidded to a halt, his chest heaving, the golden angelic aura flickering like a dying candle as confusion washed over his face. He looked up, expecting praise for the sparring match. Instead, he found judgment. They stood upon the pristine, white void of the Null realm, a place that existed outside of time, governed by the absolute neutrality of the angels. The Grand Priest, the father of all angels and the terrifying enforcer of Zeno's will, hovered inches above the ground. His expression was not one of malice, nor anger. It was the terrifying, placid look of a gardener pruning a weed that had grown too tall. "The experiment is concluded," the Grand Priest whispered. His voice was soft, yet it carried the weight of 1,000,000,000 dying galaxies. Saiyans possess a chaotic potential that threatens the hierarchy of the divine. We allowed it for amusement. Now it endangers the architecture of existence. He raised a single pale finger. Goku, battered from a sparring match that had turned suddenly horribly real, looked up. He didn't have time to transform. He didn't have time to beg. The Grand Priest's finger flicked, a motion so casual it was insulting. Erasure. It wasn't the purple disintegration of a Hakai. It was instantaneous unmaking. One moment, the savior of Universe 7 was standing there, his chest heaving, his eyes wide with confusion. The next, he was simply gone, not dead, erased, struck from the tapestry of reality as if he had never drawn breath. Except for one thing. Gravity asserted itself. A heap of orange and blue fabric fluttered to the white floor. The weight of the weighted GI slammed into the silence. Vegeta stood 10 paces away. The prince's eyes were wide, the pupils trembling, fixed on the empty pile of clothes. His mind fractured. He waited for the joke. He waited for Kakarot to pop out, laughing, scratching his head. He waited for a key signature to flare up. But there was nothing, just the cold, recycled air of the Null realm and the Grand Priest dusting off his hands. "Now," the angel said, turning his violet eyes toward the prince, "ideally, you should follow." Vegeta didn't hear him. He was looking at the guy. The rivalry that had defined his life. The man who had pushed him to break his limits. The only being who truly understood the burden of their dead race. Was gone. And it wasn't a warrior's death. It was a sterile, bureaucratic execution. Something inside Vegeta's soul, Something older than Super Saiyan, older than Ultra Ego, something ancient and primal, snapped. It wasn't the snap of a twig. It was the cracking of the foundation of the universe. The timeline stands on the precipice of total annihilation. The hero is gone, and only the monster remains. Before we witness the birth of a power that will make the angels tremble, commit your spirit to this legend, subscribe and bear witness, so this history is never forgotten. The silence was physical. It had weight, mass, and texture. It pressed down upon the null realm like a collapsing star, suffocating the infinite white void until the only sound remaining was the frantic, thundering rhythm of Vegeta's own hearts. Ba-dump, ba-dump, ba-dump. He stared at the heap of orange cloth. It lay crumpled on the pristine tile, looking pathetically small. A moment ago it had contained a universe. A moment ago it had contained the idiot who laughed in the face of death, the rival who had dragged Vegeta from the depths of barbarism to the heights of divinity, the only other living being who remembered the smell of the red soil of planet Vegeta. Now it was just laundry. The Grand Priest lowered his hand. The motion was graceful, terrifyingly precise. There was no smoke from his fingertips, no residual energy crackling in the air. The erasure had been surgical. It was as if Kakarot had been a smudge on a painting, and the great minister had simply wiped him away with a damp cloth. Lord Grand Priest? The voice belonged to Beerus, the god of destruction, usually the embodiment of terrifying caprice, sounded small. He stood on the spectator bleachers, his purple hands gripping the railing so hard the divine metal warped beneath his claws. His ears were flattened against his skull, his eyes wide with a terror that a destroyer should never know. You erased him," Beerus stammered, the words tasting like ash. "Without trial? Without Zeno's decree?" The Grand Priest turned slowly, his halo rotating with a soft melodic hum. "Do not mistake my patience for servitude, Lord Beerus. Zeno-sama desires amusement, yes, but Zeno-sama also requires a universe that functions. Son Goku had crossed a threshold." The priest drifted downward, his feet touching the arena floor without making a sound. He walked toward Vegeta, who had not moved. The prince was a statue of shock, his breath shallow, his eyes unblinking. He accessed the golden angel resonance. The Grand Priest continued, his tone conversational, as if discussing the weather. "A mortal wielding the power of destruction is tolerable. It is a crude tool. A mortal mastering the silver instinct is dangerous, but manageable. But for a Saiyan, a race bred for violence and chaos. To touch the golden frequency of the angels, that is a corruption of the code. It is a virus." He stopped 5 paces from Vegeta. "The virus has been purged." Vegeta's knees hit the floor. He didn't fall, he collapsed, the strength in his legs evaporating not from exhaustion, but from the sudden, violent hollowing of his soul. He reached out, his gloved hand trembling violently, and touched the fabric of the guy. It was still warm. That warmth was the cruelest joke of all. The residual heat of Kakarot's body, the faint static of the golden angel power he had just unlocked. It was fading, second by second, dissipating into the cold neutrality of the void. Vegeta clutched the fabric, his fingers digging into the orange material. He expected to hear a voice. "Hey, Vegeta, that was close." He expected the air to shift, but the silence held. The silence was absolute. "Look at him," the Grand Priest said, gesturing to the kneeling prince. "Broken. This is the flaw of your species. You tether your power to emotion. You bind your potential to relationships. When the tether is cut, you do not ascend, you crumble. Beerus made a move to jump down, to intervene, but a staff blocked his path. Wes stood there, his face unreadable, though his grip on his staff was white-knuckled. "Whis!" Beerus hissed. "Do something! That's my warrior down there." "My father has made his judgment, my lord," Whis said, though his voice lacked its usual lilt. It was flat, hollow. "If you intervene, you will be erased before your feet touch the ground. The hierarchy has shifted." Down in the arena, the sound of tearing fabric cut through the air. Vegeta was gripping the gi so tightly that it had ripped. He pulled the cloth to his chest, burying his face in it. A sound escaped him, a guttural, animal noise that was half sob, half growl. It was the sound of a man who had lost everything, gained it back, and then had it stolen by a force he couldn't punch, couldn't blast, couldn't fight. He had spent decades chasing Kakarot's shadow. He had defined his existence by the gap between them. "I will surpass you." That promise was the engine of his life. And now? There was no one to surpass. The finish line had been removed. The race was canceled. "You," Vegeta whispered into the orange cloth. "You idiot! You damn fool! It is time to finish the cleaning, that's..." the Grand Priest announced. He looked at Vegeta with the dispassionate eyes of an exterminator. "Vegeta the fool. You share the same genetic corruption. You harbor the same chaotic potential. While you have not yet touched the golden light, the risk remains." The Grand Priest raised his hand again, the same pale finger extended. "Ideally, you should follow your brother in arms. It is a mercy. You will simply cease to be. No pain, no memory, just peace." Beerus screamed from the stands. "Wait!" The Grand Priest ignored him. Energy began to gather at his fingertip, a small white sphere of absolute erasure. But Vegeta did not look up. He did not beg. He did not scramble away. He remained kneeling, clutching the empty shell of his rival. "Peace?" Vegeta murmured. The word hung in the air, heavy and dark. "You call this peace?" Vegeta's shoulders began to shake. At first, it looked like weeping. The Grand Priest paused, allowing the mortal a final moment of despair. But the shaking grew more violent. A low rumble started in Vegeta's chest, vibrating against the floor tiles. It wasn't a sob. "You stole his death," Vegeta whispered, the volume rising, his voice cracking like dry thunder. "He was a warrior. He deserved to die in battle. He deserved to go out burning." Vegeta slowly raised his head. His eyes were not the teal of blue, nor the purple of ego. They were black, the deep abyss-like black of his base form. But they were dilated, swallowing the white light of the Null realm. Tears streamed down his face, but his expression was twisted into a rictus of pure, unadulterated loathing. "You treated him like a clerical error." The scream shattered the calm. It echoed off the infinite walls of the void. "Peace?" Vegeta stood up, the torn gi still clutched in his left hand. "I don't want your peace. I don't want your order. I don't want your godhood if this is what it costs." The Grand Priest sighed, a sound of mild disappointment. "Resistance creates mess. Goodbye, Prince." The white sphere fired. It was a beam of erasure, faster than light, inevitable as time. It crossed the distance between the angel and the Saiyan in 0 seconds. It struck Vegeta in the center of his chest. Beerus looked away. Whis closed his eyes. The beam hit. The space where Vegeta stood was engulfed in the white light of non-existence. "Done," the Grand Priest said, lowering his hand. But the light did not fade. Instead, it turned gray. The light of Erasure was supposed to be the end of physics. It was the white screen at the end of the film, the absolute zero of existence. When it touched matter, that matter simply forgot how to exist. But the light surrounding Vegeta was not white, it was gray, a sickly, static-filled color that looked like the reception of a dead channel. It swirled and churned, heavy and viscous, like oil mixing with water. The Grand Priest frowned. It was a microscopic movement, a tightening of the skin around his eyes. But in the realm of the angels, it was the equivalent of a scream of terror. He retracted his finger, expecting the anomaly to dissipate. It did not. The gray sphere pulsating around the Saiyan prince began to expand. It wasn't pushing the air away, it was eating it. The pristine white atmosphere of the Null realm, the holy ether that sustained the angels, was being devoured, converted into this heavy, monochromatic smog. "What is this?" Whis whispered, his voice trembling. "The erasure, it's stalling. No, it's being digested." From within the gray, swirling nebula, a hand emerged. It was gloved in white, but the leather was stained with soot. The hand reached out and gripped the edge of the erasure energy, the very fabric of the technique that had deleted Son Goku, and crushed it. With the sound of shattering glass, the sphere of divine light broke apart. It rained down as harmless sparks, sizzling out before they hit the ground. Vegeta stood in the center of the crater. He was not screaming. He was not powering up. In fact, his ki was undetectable. To the senses of the gods, Vegeta felt like a hole in the universe, a blank space where a soul used to be. His armor was cracked, the chest plate hanging by a single strap. The orange guy of Kakarot was tied around his left arm, a bright band of color in a world that was rapidly losing its saturation. But it was his face that froze the blood in Beerus's veins. Vegeta's face was devoid of the scowl that had defined him for 40 years. It was slack, calm, and terrifyingly empty. His eyes were pits of pure obsidian, rimmed with a bleeding red light that looked like an open wound. "You speak of laws," Vegeta said. His voice sounded like it was coming from everywhere at once, a multi-layered distortion of grinding stones. "You speak of hierarchy, of order." He took a step forward. The ground beneath his boot turned gray and crumbled into dust. The Null realm, the indestructible stage of the gods, was rotting beneath his feet. "I spent my life chasing your order," Vegeta continued, taking another step. "I humbled myself before the destroyer. I learned the dance of the angel. I wore the earring. I bit my tongue. I played the part of the good little soldier because I thought that was the path to power." He looked down at his hands. Dark, smoky energy began to bleed from his fingertips, dripping onto the floor like liquid tar. "But Kakarot played by your rules. He reached the pinnacle you set for us, and you killed him for it." The Grand Priest floated higher, instinctually creating distance. "You are misunderstanding the nature of divinity, mortal. We do not set rules to oppress you. We set them to keep reality from collapsing. Your friend became a liability." "A liability," Vegeta repeated, tasting the word. "Yes, that is all we are to you. Numbers on a spreadsheet. Variables in an experiment." Vegeta looked up, locking eyes with the Father of Angels. "I am done with your experiment. I am done with your divinity." "Hakai," Vegeta whispered, but he didn't aim it at an object. He didn't aim it at the Grand Priest. He aimed it inward. Beerus gasped, leaning over the rail. Vegeta, no. If you use destruction on your own soul, I am not destroying my soul, Beerus, Vegeta replied, not breaking eye contact with the angel. I am destroying my faith. With a sickening crunch, Vegeta flared his energy, but it wasn't the purple aura of Ultra Ego. That form relied on the mindset of a destroyer, a god who destroys to maintain balance. Vegeta no longer cared about balance. He wanted the scale to break. The purple energy of destruction ignited, but was immediately strangled by the black and gray sludge of his grief. The two energies clashed violently inside his body. The divine power of a god of destruction and the mortal hatred of a grieving Saiyan. They should have annihilated him. They should have torn him apart at the atomic level. Instead, they fused. A shock wave of silent pressure blasted outward. The Grand Priest raised a barrier, but the barrier cracked. The Zeno guards were blown back, their feet skidding across the floor. When the dust settled, the null realm had changed. The sky was no longer white. It was a bruised, twilight violet. The air was cold. And Vegeta had changed. He was no longer in his base form. His hair remained black, but it had grown sharper, longer, flowing like liquid ink in an underwater current. His eyebrows were gone, replaced by a heavy prehistoric ridge of bone and muscle. His skin had turned a pale, alabaster gray, looking more like marble than flesh. But the most terrifying detail was the halo. Behind his back, a ring of energy formed. But unlike the vertical, holy halos of the angels, this one was vertical and jagged, made of black lightning that crackled with the sound of screaming metal. It was a crown of thorns made of anti-energy. What is that form? Whis asked, his voice barely audible. It has no divine signature. It has no mortal signature. It is nothing. Vegeta exhaled and a cloud of frost escaped his lips.
You call yourselves gods,
Vegeta said, his voice dropping an octave, resonating in the bones of everyone present. You believe your power is absolute because you control creation and destruction. He raised his hand. The black lightning from his jagged halo arced down his arm, pooling in his palm. But there is a third state, one you forgot, one you feared. Vegeta clenched his fist. The space around the Grand Priest began to warp, not from gravity but from rejection, rebellion. The Grand Priest did not flinch. To flinch was to admit surprise, and surprise was a defect of the unprepared. Yet the air around him grew heavy, losing its buoyancy. The perfect mathematical symmetry of the null realm was unraveling, the grid lines of existence warping toward the singularity that was Vegeta. An interesting mutation, the Grand Priest stated, his voice cool though it no longer carried the absolute authority of a law of physics. You have inverted the energy of destruction. Instead of erasing matter, you are erasing the concept of authority. It is heretical. He flicked his fingers toward the twin guards of Zeno. Remove him. Do not erase him. Capture him. He must be dissected to understand how a mortal soul can sustain such a paradox. The guards moved. They were entities of absolute discipline, beings who had never known fear, hesitation, or defeat. They did not rush, they simply arrived. They bypassed the space between point A and point B, appearing instantly on either side of the Saiyan prince. Their staves, indestructible rods of divine metal capable of subduing a fully enraged god of destruction, descended in a synchronized cross-strike aimed at Vegeta's neck. It was a maneuver that had ended wars before they began. It was a strike written into the code of the multiverse as inescapable. Clang. The sound was not of metal hitting flesh. It was the sound of a bell being dropped into a deep ocean, muffled, heavy, and wrong. Vegeta had not moved his feet. He had not raised his arms to block. The staves had stopped inches from his skin, caught in the aura of gray static that oozed from his body. The divine metal, forged by the Omni King himself, began to vibrate. Then it began to hiss. "Is that it?" Vegeta asked. His voice was a low drone, like the hum of a dying transformer. "Is this the might of the heavens?" He turned his head slowly to the guard on his left. The guard, face hidden behind a mask of stoic neutrality, applied more pressure. Galaxies of energy poured into the staff, enough to vaporize a universe. Vegeta's eyes, those bleeding red rims around the abyss, narrowed. "Kneel." It wasn't a command, it was a gravity well. Vegeta's aura flared, turning from gray to a deep bruised charcoal. The God-killer energy lashed out like a whip. It didn't strike the guard's body. It struck the guard's divinity. The halo floating behind the guard's head flickered. The divine light that granted them immunity to mortal laws was stripped away in a violent tearing sound. The guard gasped, a sound they had likely never made in eons. As the weight of mortality suddenly crashed down upon him, Vegeta reached out, his hand moving with a terrifying, jagged speed, and grabbed the face of the guard. "You watched," Vegeta hissed, his fingers digging into the divine mask. "You stood there and watched him die. You hold the staves of justice, but you are just executioners in fancy robes." The gray energy poured from Vegeta's hand into the guard's skull. The white light of the angel attendant turned necrotic black. "Disappear!" Vegeta slammed the guard into the floor of the Null realm. The impact was so severe, it didn't just break the tiles. It shattered the dimensional barrier beneath them. A spiderweb of black cracks spread outward, leaking the void of nothingness into the arena. The second guard, realizing the threat, abandoned the capture order. He spun his staff, the tip glowing with the violet light of Erasure, and thrust it toward Vegeta's spine. Vegeta didn't turn around. The jagged black lightning halo on his back spun violently, acting like a buzzsaw. It caught the tip of the staff. Sparks of antimatter flew. The staff, the symbol of Zeno's law, groaned. "Whis," Beerus whispered from the stands, his claws digging into his own palms until he drew blood. "What is he doing? That's impossible. You can't break angelic weaponry. It's immutable." "He isn't breaking the weapon, my lord Zeno," Whis replied, his eyes wide, losing their usual detachment. "He is rejecting the truth of its existence. His will is currently stronger than the reality the staff is made of. He is unwriting the rules as he fights." With a sharp snap, the guard's staff shattered. The sound echoed like a gunshot in a cathedral. The top half of the divine weapon spun away, clattering uselessly on the floor. The second guard stumbled back, looking at the broken haft in his hand. For the first time in the history of the multiverse, a Zeno guard took a step backward in fear. Vegeta turned. The orange band of Goku's gi on his arm fluttered in the chaotic wind of his Kai. "You are afraid," Vegeta noted, walking through the debris of the first guard, who was now dissolving into particles of gray dust. Not dead, but de-evolved, stripped of form. "Good. You should be." He closed the distance to the second guard in a blink. It wasn't instant transmission. He simply tore through the space. He grabbed the guard by the throat and lifted him one-handed. "This is for the arrogance," Vegeta snarled. He punched the guard in the stomach. The fist didn't stop at the surface. The shockwave blew out the back of the guard's uniform, dispersing the divine aura into the void. "This is for the silence." He struck again, a backhand that shattered the guard's mask, revealing a pale, terrified face beneath. "And this is for Kakarot." Vegeta grabbed the guard's halo, the ring of light floating behind his head, and pulled. The fabric of reality screamed. It was a high-pitched, electronic screech. The halo, a construct of pure dimensional energy, resisted. But Vegeta's god-killer form was an abyss that accepted no limits. With a roar that shook the infinite void, Vegeta ripped the halo from the air. He crushed it in his fist. The guard fell limp, his connection to the angels severed, his immortality voided. He dropped to the floor, unconscious, mortal, defeated. Silence returned to the Null realm, but it was not the sterile silence of the Grand Priest. It was the terrified silence of a prey animal hiding from a predator. Vegeta stood over the broken bodies of the highest guards in existence. He breathed heavily, the gray steam venting from his mouth. He looked up, past the floating debris, past the shocked face of Beerus, past the wide eyes of Whis. He locked eyes with the Grand Priest. The angel's smile was gone. His hands were no longer clasped behind his back. They were at his sides, fingers twitching. "You," the Grand Priest began, his voice losing its softness. Vegeta pointed a finger at him. The tip of the finger was stained with the light of the fallen guards. "Your laws are broken, priest," Vegeta said, his voice calm, cold, and final. "You have no soldiers left. You have no rules that bind me. It's just you, me." Vegeta clenched his fist, and the jagged black halo on his back flared, expanding until it looked like a pair of dark, skeletal wings. "And the memory of the man you murdered." The Grand Priest descended. He did not float with the ethereal grace of a leaf drifting on the wind. He moved with the decisive gravity of a guillotine blade. The white void around him seemed to peel away, revealing the raw, mathematical grid of the multiverse beneath. His aura, usually invisible, now manifested, a blinding, iridescent white that hurt the eyes to behold. It was the light of absolute law. "You have humiliated my children," the Grand Priest said. His voice was no longer a whisper. It was the sound of tectonic plates grinding together. "You have defiled the sanctity of the Null realm. You have rejected the gift of existence." He stopped 10 meters from Vegeta. The space between them shimmered, caught between the crushing pressure of the Angel's order and the corrosive rot of the Saiyans' rebellion. "I will not erase you, Vegeta," the Grand Priest declared, his violet eyes glowing with cold fire. "I will unmake your history. I will unravel the thread of your life until you are nothing more than a bad dream that the universe has forgotten." Vegeta didn't flinch. He adjusted the orange gi tied around his arm. The fabric was the only thing in the arena that retained its true color. Everything else was washing out into high-contrast monochrome. "You still don't get it," Vegeta growled, settling into a stance. It wasn't the stance of a martial artist. It was the stance of a brawler, low and savage. "My history is my power, my sins, my failures, my rivalry. You can't unmake what I am, because I am the result of everything you hate about mortals. I am the stubborn refusal to stay down." The Grand Priest raised a hand. "Then let us test that refusal." Boom. There was no travel time. The Grand Priest was simply there, his small fist buried in Vegeta's gut. The impact was cataclysmic. A shockwave of pure force ejected from Vegeta's back, punching a hole through the fabric of the Null realm into the swirling chaos of the dimensions beyond. Vegeta's eyes bulged, spit flying from his mouth mixed with blood. The Grand Priest didn't stop. He spun, a heel kick connecting with Vegeta's temple, sending the prince crashing through the arena floor, down into the bedrock of the void. "Pathetic," the Grand Priest murmured, looking down into the crater. "You attain a new form, you break a few toys, and you think you can challenge the architect." A beam of gray light erupted from the crater. The priest leaned his head to the side, dodging it by a millimeter. Vegeta shot out of the hole, a streak of charcoal lightning. He slammed into the priest, driving him backward. For the first time, the Grand Priest's feet skidded across the ground. Vegeta roared, unleashing a flurry of punches. Each blow carried the weight of a dying star. Left, right, hook, uppercut. The Grand Priest blocked them all. His movements were a blur of efficiency, parrying with his forearms, deflecting with his palms. But with every block, the priest frowned deeper. Vegeta's energy was sticky. Every time Vegeta's fist connected with the priest's defense, a smudge of gray god-killer energy was left behind. It clung to the angel's robes. It clung to his skin. And where it clung, the iridescent aura of the priest dimmed. "You are infecting me," the priest realized, shoving Vegeta back with a pulse of telekinetic force. He looked at his arm. The blue skin was turning a pale, sickly gray. "I told you," Vegeta panted, wiping blood from his chin. He was battered, his armor shattered, his chest heaving. But his Kai was rising. "I'm not just fighting you, I'm denying you." Vegeta raised both hands. The jagged halo on his back spun faster, generating a hum that vibrated the teeth of everyone watching. "I don't just want to kill you, priest. Killing you doesn't bring him back." Vegeta's eyes began to bleed light. Not red, but a swirling vortex of colors. Past, future, present. "I'm going to take it back." He clapped his hands together. Final flash, CHRONOS. The beam that erupted from Vegeta's hands was not yellow. It was transparent, rippling like heat haze, surrounded by spirals of black lightning. It didn't travel through space. It traveled through time. The Grand Priest's eyes widened. "You fool! You are striking the timeline itself. You will collapse the causal loop." "I don't care!" Vegeta screamed, pouring every ounce of his life force into the blast. His muscles tore, his veins burst. "If the timeline doesn't have Kakarot in it, then I don't want it." The beam hit the Grand Priest. He raised a barrier of absolute time, a wall of frozen seconds. But the God-killer energy chewed through it. The beam wasn't just force. It was a rewind button mashed down by the thumb of a god. The Null realm began to flicker. Flicker. The debris of the arena flew back together. Flicker. The shattered staff of the guard reassembled. Flicker. The crater in the floor smoothed over. "Stop this!" The Grand Priest struggled, his hands pushing against the torrent of time reversal energy. "You cannot reverse an erasure. It is absolute." "Nothing is absolute," Vegeta roared, stepping forward. His skin was cracking, glowing with the strain. He was burning his own soul as fuel. "Accept my pride." He took another step. The beam intensified. The Grand Priest was being pushed back, not just in space, but in time. His movements became jerky, repeating. He was glitching. Vegeta looked past the priest. He looked through the tunnel of distortion his blast was creating. He saw it. Seconds ago, The image was grainy like an old film. He saw the Grand Priest standing calmly. He saw the finger raised. And he saw him, Goku, standing there, confused, alive. Vegeta's heart hammered against his ribs. He was close. He was so close. He just needed to reach a little further. He needed to push past the barrier of the now and step into the then. Kakarot! Vegeta screamed, his voice breaking the sound barrier. The Grand Priest's defense shattered. The CHRONOS final flash engulfed him, not burning him, but washing over him, dragging the entire localized reality backward. The white void spun, the stars inverted. The sound of the universe played in reverse, a sucking, rushing noise. Vegeta ran. He didn't run across the floor. He ran into the light. He ran into the past. His body began to disintegrate. The sheer friction of moving against the flow of time was stripping his flesh from his bones. But he didn't stop. He focused on the orange gi. He focused on the stupid, grinning face of his rival. "I will not let you die alone." Vegeta reached out, his hand dissolving into particles of light, stretching toward the image of the Grand Priest's raised finger. He had 1 second, 1 heartbeat to change destiny. Time is not a river. To the lower beings it flows, meanders, and carries them toward the inevitable ocean of death. But to the gods, time is a structure, cathedral of crystal, rigid and perfect. Vegeta was currently smashing his head against the cathedral walls. The pain was beyond the capacity of a nervous system to process. It wasn't physical pain, it was ontological. The universe was screaming at him that he was, but he was trying to go to a place where he was not yet. The friction stripped the skin from his knuckles. It peeled the gray God-killer armor from his chest, revealing the raw, glowing spirit beneath. He was becoming less of a biological entity and more of a projectile of pure will. Through the tunnel of reversing light, he saw it. The image crystallized. The Grand Priest floating, the finger raised, the expression of bored detachment. Kakarot standing there, the golden aura flickering, looking up in confusion. There. That was the wound in history. That was the moment the universe went wrong. "Move!" Vegeta screamed, though he had no lungs. He didn't run. He forced his existence into the gap between seconds. He burned the last reserves of his life force, the energy that kept his heart beating, and converted it into speed. The distance closed, the tunnel shattered. Now, the Grand Priest hovered in the null realm. The timeline had just reset, though he did not know it yet. He looked down at Son Goku, the unruly weed. "Erasure," the Grand Priest whispered. The muscles in his pale finger tensed. The technique was already active. The command was sent to the fabric of reality. "Delete Son Goku." The finger flicked forward. Crack! It sounded like lightning striking a glacier. A shock wave of black and gray pressure exploded outward, blowing the hair back from Goku's forehead. The Grand Priest's eyes went wide. His finger had not completed the motion. It was stopped. A hand, skeletal, charred, wreathed in black smoke and bleeding starlight, had manifested out of thin air and gripped the Grand Priest's wrist. The air smelled of ozone and ancient rage. "What?" the Grand Priest stammered. It was the first time in eons he had stuttered. He looked at the owner of the hand. Vegeta stood there, but it was not the Vegeta of this moment. The one who was currently kneeling on the sidelines watching the fight. This was a nightmare version of the prince. His armor was gone. His upper body was a canvas of cracks, leaking blinding white light. His left eye was swollen shut, and his right eye was a pit of absolute infinite darkness. Smoke poured from his skin, the residue of traveling through time without a machine. The Grand Priest's voice trembled. You are not from here. Vegeta didn't speak immediately. He breathed in a ragged, wet sound. He squeezed the angel's wrist. The Grand Priest gasped as he felt his divine energy, the energy of the Father of Angels, being corroded. The God-Killer frequency was not just canceling his power. It was eating his origin. I am the variable, Vegeta rasped, his voice sounding like two stones grinding together. You forgot to carry the one. Below them, Goku took a step back, his eyes wide. Vegeta? He looked from the pristine Vegeta on the sidelines. He was currently fading away, the timeline correcting itself as the future version overwrote the present, to the monster standing in the sky. Geats, your key. It feels like... Goku couldn't finish the sentence. It felt like death. The Grand Priest snarled, his composure finally breaking. Unhand me, mortal. He flared his aura. The white light of the Omni King's attendant erupted, hot enough to melt a galaxy. It should have vaporized Vegeta instantly. But Vegeta didn't let go. No, Vegeta said. The black lightning of his aura rose up, swallowing the white light. The jagged halo on Vegeta's back, now shattered and fragmented, spun one last time. You took him from me, Vegeta whispered, leaning in close, face to face with the highest deity in the cosmos. You decided we were done. You decided our story ended here. Vegeta pulled his free arm back. The energy gathering in his fist wasn't Kai. It wasn't Hakai. It was the sum total of every push-up, every scream, every defeat, every drop of blood spilled in the name of catching up to the man standing below them. It was the weight of a rivalry that defied the gods. But I say when we're done, Vegeta punched. It was a blow devoid of technique. It was a brawler's haymaker. It connected squarely with the Grand Priest's face. The impact didn't make a sound. Instead, the universe turned negative, colors inverted, gravity reversed. The Grand Priest's head snapped back. The halo behind his head shattered into a billion shards of light. The force of the blow drove the God-Killer energy directly into the angel's core. Gah! The Grand Priest screamed, a sound that tore the sky of the null realm in half. He was launched backward, crashing into the floating spectator stands. The impact demolished the bleachers, sending the other gods of destruction scrambling for safety. The Grand Priest tried to rise. He tried to summon his staff, but his hands were fading. He looked at his fingers. They were turning into gray dust. My time, the priest gasped, watching his own body disintegrate. You stole my time. Vegeta floated in the air, his arms still extended. He didn't chase. He didn't need to. The strike had been fatal to the concept of the priest's existence. He had injected mortality into an immortal being. The immune system of the universe was now rejecting the angel. You were right, Vegeta called out, his voice fading, his own body beginning to flicker as the energy left him. We are dangerous. We are chaotic. The Grand Priest looked up one last time, his face half gone. But we are free. With a soft sigh, the Grand Priest dissolved. There was no explosion. He simply unspooled, turning into a stream of white sparkles that drifted up into the endless void, rejoining the raw data of the cosmos. The Father of Angels was gone. Silence returned to the null realm, but this time it was not the silence of erasure, it was the silence of awe. Vegeta dropped. Gravity reclaimed him. He fell from the sky, his god-killer form evaporating like steam. The gray skin receded. The jagged halo vanished. The black lightning faded. He was just a man, a battered, broken, dying man. Vegeta. Goku moved. He didn't use instant transmission. He just flew, catching his rival before he hit the ground. Goku landed softly, holding Vegeta in his arms. The prince was light, too light. It felt as if his soul had been hollowed out. His breathing was shallow, a rattling wheeze in his chest. "You idiot," Goku said, his voice thick with panic. He placed a hand on Vegeta's chest, trying to share energy. But Vegeta's body was rejecting it. "What did you do? You look like you aged 1,000 years. Vegeta opened his right eye. The black abyss was gone, replaced by the familiar stubborn iris. "I fixed it," Vegeta wheezed. Blood trickled from the corner of his mouth. "He tried to erase you." Goku froze. "Erase me?" "Just like a weed," Vegeta coughed, a grim smile tugging at his lips. "I disagreed with his gardening methods." Beerus and Whis landed next to them. Whis looked at the spot where his father had vanished, then down at Vegeta. The angel's face was unreadable, a mix of grief and terrifying respect. "He rewrote the timeline," Whis said softly. "He forced the universe to accept a contradiction rather than accept your death, Goku. He killed the Grand Priest to save you." Beerus stared at Vegeta. "You reckless, arrogant, magnificent fool." Vegeta grabbed Goku's gi. The same orange fabric he had clutched in the other timeline. He pulled Goku closer. "Kakarot." "I'm here, Vegeta. I'm right here." "Don't you dare." Vegeta struggled for breath, his eyes closing. "Don't you dare die before I beat you." "I won't," Goku promised, tears spilling onto his cheeks. "I promise. We'll fight forever. Just hang on." Vegeta's grip loosened. His hand slid off the orange gi and hit the floor. His chest stopped moving. Goku screamed. He flared his ki, pouring golden life force into his rival, panicking, begging. But then a staff tapped the ground. Whis stepped forward. He held his staff over Vegeta's body. The orb at the top glowed, not with the white light of the angels, but with a strange, warm, pulsing energy. "My father is gone," Whis said, his voice echoing in the quiet. "The laws he upheld are dissolved. The neutrality is broken." Whis looked at Goku, then at the fallen prince. "A life for a life. That is the old law. But perhaps it is time for new rules." Whis tapped the staff on Vegeta's chest. "Temporal rewind. Individual state." It was a technique forbidden to angels. It violated every code the Grand Priest had written, but the Grand Priest wasn't there to write them anymore. Color flooded back into Vegeta's face. The cracks in his skin sealed. His breath hitched, then deepened. Vegeta gasped, his eyes snapping open. He sat up violently, coughing, clutching his chest. "What?" Vegeta looked at his hands. He looked at Goku, who was grinning through his tears. He looked at Whis. "Why?" Vegeta asked the angel. "I killed your father." "You killed an executioner," Whis corrected, looking up at the empty sky where the throne of the multiverse used to be. "And in doing so, you freed his children. We are no longer bound to the neutrality. We are free to choose." We smiled, a genuine small smile. "And I choose to not let this story end today." Vegeta looked at Goku. The rivalry was there. The annoyance was there, but underneath it, buried deep in the Saiyan pride, was something else. A bond forged in the fires of a timeline that no longer existed. Vegeta stood up. He dusted off his armor. He crossed his arms, turning his back to Kakarot to hide the emotion in his eyes. Don't think this means I like you, Kakarot. I just didn't want the multiverse to be boring without you. Goku laughed. It was the sound of life. It was the sound that filled the void. Yeah, Geets, I know. Goku stood up and clenched his fist, raising it toward the prince. Next time, though, let's handle it together. Vegeta looked over his shoulder. He looked at the fist. He smirked. Try to keep up. Above them, the null realm began to change. The white void softened, turning into a deep, endless blue. Stars began to ignite, one by one, birthed from the energy of the fallen priest. The era of absolute law was over. The era of the mortal will had begun. And in the center of it all, two Saiyans stood side by side, ready to challenge whatever came next.